Australia has always been this hyped up dream spot. Beaches, chilled vibes, good money, and I think from the outside looking in, you'd think Australia is very underrated. Now that might be because we're very isolated. I think the flight time to the closest city in America is about 16 hours, and a lot of my audience actually isn't from Australia, so I'm going to break it down, I'm going to get into it, and I'm going to let you know if Australia is overrated or underrated. No sugarcoating, no negativity just for clicks either, just a straight up breakdown of what living here actually feels like. So I'm going to start with the obvious one from the outside looking in that a lot of people recognize Australia for, and that's the beaches. And I will say straight away that they are underrated. They most definitely live up to the hype. You've got the very well-known ones like Bondi, Whitehaven, and all the beaches along the Great Ocean Road. And these spots don't just look good in photos, they look even better in real life. I'm not a surfer myself, but the surf culture is real, and most Aussies really do live within an hour of the coast. Like, I'm not just making that up, but of course there's a catch. Living near these prime spots are super pricey. For instance, Bondi Beach, the median house price there is $3 million, and tourists go crazy during peak seasons, and that can be said for most beaches, I guess, across the world. During peak seasons, especially summer in Australia, these beach towns get crazy, and if you're local, you probably hate, all the beach goers. So while the beaches are definitely underrated, they do come with a hefty price tag, and depending what beach you go, very busy. A lot of people that watch my channel are also very curious about work life, so I'm going to touch on work-life balance, and to me, it's very overrated. Australia is marketed as this ultimate work-life balance haven, clocking off early, hitting the beach, but that's not really the reality. Not everyone lives that life. A lot of industries have really demanding hours, and apparently 20% of Aussies work over 50 hours a week. So that's pretty much 10-hour work days. In Australia as well, there's this very big culture around FIFO work. Now, FIFO stands for fly in, fly out, and where they fly into is mining cities. It could literally be in the middle of Australia. They will fly there. They'll work for about 2 weeks, I think, maybe 10 days, and then they'll come back for about a week or 2 weeks. And they just do that for the whole year. And in Australia, the 9-to-5 structure is still definitely thriving. Big cities like Melbourne and Sydney are grinding hubs, which I would almost compare to New York and LA. And if I had to choose which one is which, I'd probably say Melbourne is LA and Sydney is New York. But overall, work life is pretty same as any other Western country. I would say for a lot of the things that I'm going to go into today, we definitely fall under a copycat sort of syndrome, where everything the US or the UK does, we will do in some form or one another, and just sort of have our own Australian spin on it. And just like every country in the world right now, there's no laid back culture. Realistically, if you want to pay for the high rents, you have to work a lot. Now, throwing it back to something that's very underrated, and that's the nature in Australia. Australia's natural beauty isn't just hype, it's very unmatched. A lot of it is unscathed and untouched, and a lot of it is also desert. But regardless, Australia is beautiful, in particular Queensland. There's a lot of 4x4 culture and what everyone calls the bush. So it's sort of our version of the forest, I guess you could say. Unless you are in the tropical areas like Cairns or northern Queensland, you are going to sort of get dry trees, dry sort of areas. Camping trips, national parks, and coastal drives are a part of life here. Even the city dwellers are very close to some jaw-dropping scenery. I think Australians do have a slight different connection to nature that adds a calm vibe to the lifestyle that we live. But of course, nature has its downfires. We get a lot of bushfires, a lot of floods, and a lot of extreme weather events. Very recently, we had a crazy flood in Townsville, which is in northern Queensland. And of course, if we're talking about nature, a lot of people always put Australia and spiders together. And yeah, the spiders are fucking crazy here. But to be honest, you don't really see them that much. But when you do, it's fucked. And it also depends on where you live. The closer to the city you live, you're not really going to be seeing spiders. The further away you are, you most definitely will. And that goes for snakes as well. They scare the shit out of me. And now we're going to jump back over to the working life. And that is the wages. Blatantly put, the wages are completely overrated. Australians' minimum wage is $23, which I think in USD is about maybe $17, maybe 16 USD. And yeah, that sounds like a win, but the cost of living right now is crazy. Groceries, utilities, and dining out can really drain your wallet. And for example, a Big Mac here costs $7.35, just the one burger. That's Australian dollars. And in the US, Australian dollars, that same Big Mac will only cost $5.15. Even though you're earning more in Australia, you're also spending more. Eating out is super expensive, and groceries are showing no sign of going down in price or even stopping going up in price. Fuel prices can be kind of wild. They've kind of tamed off in the past couple years, and a night out going drinking is ridiculous. It's almost off the cards. You pretty much have to pay like 20 AUD for a shot, which I think is about 15 USD. And like, of course, with the wages is what I was talking about before. With the high rent, we can't really like afford it. Something that's super underrated that I think a lot of people would assume as well is safety in Australia is pretty good. It ranks 16th on the Global Peace Index with low crime rates, a kind of stable political system, I guess you could say. Plus we get free healthcare. But even with the free healthcare, the places that offer it are getting less and less, and I would not be surprised at all if free healthcare becomes a thing of the past. Now, of course, we are geographically isolated, and I think that's super overrated. Like, it's a blessing and a curse. Sure, it means fewer global conflicts, but travel costs and times are brutal. For instance, a return flight from Sydney to London costs around 2,500 AUD, and that's about 1,500 USD. And traveling overseas is not a weekend trip. It takes heaps of planning and heaps of money. Like, even domestic travel right now can be kind of pricey because of how everything's spread out. Now, the climate, that's super overrated. Like, Australia's sunny weather sounds ideal, but it's far from perfect. Summers in Australia can hit 40 degrees Celsius, which is about 105, 110 Fahrenheit. Queensland deals with so much cyclones and all that sort of stuff. Perth and Northern Territory face heaps of bushfires, heat waves, and apparently the UV levels are crazy. We get very unpredictable rainfall and extreme weather patterns, and these extreme weather patterns are happening more frequently. Like, for instance, if you wanted to live in Queensland these days, which is the east northern coast of Australia, you can pretty much assume that whatever insurance you're paying, whether that be car or house insurance, you're going to be paying double just because the weather is heaps harsher out there. Now, something I will touch on is creative arts and culture. Like, I'm talking about music, artists, all that sort of stuff. And you know, Australia always has a growing creative scene. There's always good music festivals or like art exhibitions and stuff like that. And there is always homegrown artists making waves. But if we're being honest, a lot of it feels like a delayed echo of what's happening in the US. And people in Australia can never reach a certain height of, I guess you could say, creative fame because they're capped by Australia. Like, Australia really tends to catch on to trends really late. Like, the music scene, while strong, is really stuck in this drill wave, and the rapping style does not change at all. Where if I look at somewhere like the UK or the US, the rapping style is literally changing every 2 years. And I'm not saying that we don't have local talent at all, but it's so hard to shine through. Like, literally, what's the last person you know from Australia that blew up? That wasn't some industry plant like Kid Laroi, or some old school famous actor like Nicole Kidman, or Steve Irwin. Now, if we're talking about internet and tech infrastructure, it's kind of overrated. I guess meh, more in the middle. Like, for a developed country, Australia's internet speeds are still pretty low, and apparently we rank 68th for global internet speeds, which in the grand scheme of things, I think we should be at least minimum top 20. So it's crazy we're at 68. Like, tech infrastructure feels very behind compared to the US and parts of Asia. Now, when it comes to sports, I'm not even really going to talk about because I'm not a sports dude at all. But if you don't know, we have this game called AFL, Australian Football League, that's nothing like what's out there. And it's super unique because it really is only in Australia. You cannot find this sport anywhere else. With that being said though, a lot of it is clustered down in a state called Victoria. So you won't really see many teams around Australia. They're all down there. Transport and public infrastructure, another meh category. Like, it's decent, but it's not exceptional. Like, the main cities like Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, they have their public transport down pat, but everywhere else, it's very bad. Traffic in the cities, super bad, and it's only getting worse and worse and worse. But in general, Australia, in my opinion, is kind of overrated. Obviously, I'm going to say that because I come from Australia, but I just want everyone from the outside to know it's not all sunshines and rainbows in here. Like, yeah, there's a couple sunshines. There's a couple rainbows, there's a couple butterflies, but there's also shit things. Whether Australia is overrated to you depends on what you value. Like, if you don't care for beaches or nature or anything like that, it might be your dream spot. But if you care about affordability, unique culture, and global connectivity, Australia's probably not it for you. But yeah, I love informing you guys that don't know about Australia. If you liked the video, like the video. Subscribe for more like this. We've tried streaming and it was pretty chill. So come to the links below if you want to see that. Just playing some Skate 3, Black Ops 2, while listening to music, talking shit. Really super chill. Twitch and Kick links down below. Clothing brand, memoryfaded.au. The Instagram for that and my personal Instagram, all below. I appreciate you all for listening to this video, especially this far in the video. And yeah, it's been Once Faded. Peace.